Hello, this video is going to discuss the reasons why many economists believe that changes in the money supply can have effects on real output in the short run, although, as we'll see, not in the long run. This video connects to Chapter 10, Part 10.3, and also Learning Objective 10.3. Now this video has been split into three parts. In the first part, we developed the short-run aggregate supply curve. In the second part, we discussed updating of price expectations immediately or gradually. And in the third part, we discussed how the economy responds to a change in the money supply in the short run and in the long run. That includes a spreadsheet-based exercise. So let's start part 2. Now, many economists believe that in the short run, the expectations of the future price level will not move one-to-one with movements in the money supply. Instead, in the short run, money can be non-neutral. It can have impacts on real output. Now, how can this happen? Well, it turns out that there's different views that economists have, and we're going to try to summarize 4 of the most widely held views of what economists like to call nominal rigidities. The first view is probably the oldest. It's called money illusion, and that is a very simple idea. People simply get fooled. They're not paying attention. They're not looking at the central bank's actions. They don't fully understand what the implications of a rise or a decrease in the money supply would be. Now, most economists are uncomfortable with that explanation. It's not an acceptable theory to have market participants be irrational or foolish. We can modify that, and we can talk about situations where there might be misperceptions or confusions, that market participants may confuse a shock to their own specific sector with an aggregate shock. Now, what do we mean by that? Let's go back to our friend Dave, who is a furniture maker, and Dave may be seeing prices for his chairs rise. As a result, he may conclude that the demand for his chairs has gone up. But that may not be what's really happening. Instead, what may have happened is that the money supply rose, and Dave is just getting a little bit confused about that. He's failing to recognize that all prices, not just the prices of chairs, but all prices will go up, and that's why he supplies more chairs. Now, there's another idea. It's known as the sticky price idea, and it turns out that firms, they may actually know that a change in the money supply has taken place, and that their short-run price won't be fully incorporating the effects of that money supply change. But for various reasons, one of the reasons being that it may cost money to print up new signs and so on, they keep their prices rigid or sticky over some short run. So what happens if we have sticky prices? As we will see, firms will partially satisfy an increase in the demand by raising the quantity that they supply, but once again, that takes place in the short run. Finally, and in a related vein, is the idea of sticky wages. Now, it turns out that most wages are fixed by some kind of contract. They don't adjust immediately. So unions may sit down with firms and they may write a contract to keep wages constant and steady over a 2-year period or a 3-year period. And they'll stick to that contract even if the money supply changes and conditions change. Let's suppose that we have an increase in the money supply. In the short run, output prices are going to rise relative to wages. Output prices will go up, wages will be constant. That's going to encourage firms to employ more workers and to produce more goods and services. This model is discussed in greater detail in an online Further to the Point feature. So now we're going to introduce a new way of looking at the relationship between expected prices and the money supply. Once again, we have an equation that was very similar to the previous one, an expected increase in prices, and it's linked over here to the increase in the money supply, but you'll see now that we've added an update factor, and that's represented by the Greek letter lambda. So if we think about agents that fully update immediately They recognize that the money supply has changed and that increase in the money supply is immediately reflected in all prices and all wages. Then that update factor will be equal to 1. So if we have a lambda equal to 1, we have full updating, and that's what we think of as the classical model. However, in the short run, it turns out that we can have partial updating, and in the partial updating case, the lambda is between 0 and 1. And it turns out that if we only have partial updating, then money is not neutral. Why? The expected increase in prices is less than 1-to-1 with the increase in the money supply. We have to stress this very importantly. Ultimately, market participants will fully update their expectations. The update factor will move over time towards 1. And that's consistent with the classical model. So the question is, how rapidly will the update factor, which starts off at 0, converge on 1? And here we have 3 different cases. We have the blue solid line, which shows relatively fast updating. We have the dashed red line, which shows an intermediate case. And then we have the dotted purple line, which shows the slowest updating. Well, some have suggested that market participants will actually update more rapidly if the rate of inflation is high to begin with, a high inflation environment. And in that case, in a high inflation environment, the update line is more likely to look like this blue solid line than it is either the red dashed or the purple dotted line. But once again, it's important to stress that in all environments, market participants will ultimately update their price expectations, and lambda will converge to 1.